From Eyewitness News, this is Face the State, Connecticut's most watched local political program.
Well, good morning. I'm Courtney Zeller. Disturbing information is coming from court documents about the intentions of some of those who stormed the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th. Here to talk about that, the impeachment, and the upcoming inauguration is Connecticut Congressman Joe Courtney of the 2nd District. Welcome, Representative.
Great. Thank you, Courtney, for having me on.
Oh, thanks for being here this morning. So we want to start with what happened at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. You know, we've been reading these court documents and learned some of the rioters were looking to actually capture and assassinate elected representatives. Obviously, this is very shocking and unsettling information. Now, did you have any idea that it was at that level?
So while the event was going on, I don't think anybody did, to be honest with you, because we were all sort of in our own little bubbles in different parts of the Capitol. Again, the Capitol Police did an amazing job to get us sort of in safe locations. But frankly, after the shock wore off and people started to learn more about the seriousness of the situation, in terms of just, you know, the damage, 50 police officers were injured. One, obviously, Brian Sicknick lost his life. You know, Vice President Pence was pinned down in the basement of the Capitol for over 4 hours, along with the rest of the succession of leadership, the President pro tem of the Senate, as well as Speaker Pelosi. You know, as somebody said, we came very close to losing control of the building. It was really some incredibly smart thinking by some of the Capitol Police that led some of the rioters, you know, away from members of Congress, because they, as you point out in the indictments, are very clear. This is Donald Trump's Justice Department describing the event as, quote, a violent insurrection, close quote. And they wanted to go after Mike Pence, Nancy Pelosi, and others, and it was to kill them. I mean, there was no bones about it.
Did you ever feel like your life was in danger at one point?
So I was in the Rayburn office building. Again, most of us were watching the proceedings remotely, and obviously, you know, seeing, you know, the speaker and the vice president hustled off the stage. Steny Hoyer hustled out of the chair. You knew something really bad was going on. I was texting with Jim Himes, who was in the chamber, and described guns drawn. I mean, it was, as I said, it was shocking and stunning. You know, this is a place that Franklin Roosevelt addressed the country after Pearl Harbor, Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, and suddenly it was just being, you know, completely taken over like some unstable democracy or country and government in a part of the world that you would never, you know, sort of equate or put on par with the United States of America.
So, Representative, when you look and see the U.S. Capitol, you know, it's surrounded by fencing with razor wire. What do you think of that?
I mean, it's distressing. And, you know, I've been there, you know, even pre-9/11 days when, you know, it was much more relaxed even back then. Having said that, look, we had a briefing from the Secret Service and the Homeland Security Department where they, you know, again, are still tracking all the chatter that's out there. There are groups who at least are talking big about coming back and you know, trying to stop the inauguration. So pushing the perimeter out, limiting entry. Obviously, there's almost 20,000 and probably more National Guard, as well as other police and law enforcement that's there. I mean, frankly, it's necessary, I believe, to send a message to anybody who thinks they can just so waltz in like they did on January 6th. It is a completely different, totally different environment. And, you know, we've got to get this done. I mean, the inauguration is mandated by the Constitution, just like the vote count was on January 6th. And again, I think Mike Pence and the Speaker, you know, restarting the process and completing the count was, at the end of the day, the most remarkable part is that we were not deterred by that violence. And that violence was aimed at shutting down a constitutionally mandated process to complete an election of the President of the United States, which goes back to George Washington.
Representative Courtney, you voted to impeach President Trump for a second time. Does it serve the country, with all the unrest, for the Senate to go through a trial and possibly convict him of impeachment when he's out of office? Or is the vote to impeach by the House of Representatives enough?
I think the Senate should take it up. I mean, there's no question that as a matter of law, you can impeach after an individual leaves office. They've done it with federal judges. In the past, they did it with the Secretary of the War in the 1860s. And again, as the Constitution clearly states, it not only removes someone from office, but also bars them from holding public office in the future. No one wanted to do this. No one had an appetite for this. But frankly, as I said, as people became aware of the outrageous harm and, really premeditated violence that was going on there. Again, Liz Cheney, who I served with on the House Armed Services Committee, we've worked together on Navy issues in the past. Her comments as a staunch Republican, basically saying that, this is not something we can just sort of overlook, I think was one of the most impressive acts of political courage that I've seen in my career. And I think she's right. That this is not something that we can just sort of say, nothing to see here, let's move on. Reconciliation and healing is something that I yearn for as much as anybody else. But, acts have consequences and really people have to be held accountable.
And Representative, regarding the inauguration, which really is just days away, between the pandemic and this unrest, it's obviously going to be very different. So what do you hope the people you represent here in Connecticut take from it?
Well, again, I think we got a preview last night from President-elect Biden, who really described what his agenda is. And that's, what's really interesting, Courtney, is that in the midst of all this, we are still getting more calls in terms of bread and butter problems that people are having, issues that they're having with COVID. And I think what the president-elect laid out last night is a very strong, aggressive, fast agenda to really, accelerate vaccine distribution, which is clearly not functioning at the level that we need to get this thing behind us, and also really help bolster state and local government, make sure that our public safety, public schools, all of the stuff that kind of keeps the economy going and the lights on are going to be addressed. So I have no doubt in my mind that this great district that I've had the privilege to represent for many years, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for Washington to function and work again. And Joe Biden, I think, signaled last night that that's his agenda. He really wants to turn the page and move on.
Okay, Representative Courtney, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Courtney.
Thanks. Now, later in our program,